My name's Brandon and this is Video Game History, a show where I look back on a certain franchise of video games and retrospectively review them. Today we come to an important milestone in Cartoon Network's video game history. We have arrived at not only Cartoon Network's debut on the PlayStation 2 and GameCube with the Powerpuff Girls Relish Rampage, but this also marks the very last time either Dexter's Lab or the Powerpuff Girls received a proper standalone video game. That's right, starting next week we'll actually get to play some games from other franchises.
Well, this calls for a celebration. I will.
As I mentioned, the Powerpuff Girls Relish Rampage was the first time a Cartoon Network franchise had graced the PS2, the most popular gaming console of all time, as well as the GameCube. It was released on November 24, 2002 for the PS2, while it came to the GameCube on December 13 of the following year with additional content. Both versions were developed by Viz Entertainment, who had previously made Chemical Extraction. Chemical Extraction was a disaster, so there's some alarm bells here. As usual, it was published by BAM Entertainment, while also being distributed by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment. Looking at Metacritic, the game has a disappointing average of 46, but I guess it's a little better than what their last game scored. The highest score it received here was a 7 out of 10 from Play Magazine. Unfortunately, every other review was 5 and under, with IGN giving it a paltry 3.8. Looking at game rankings isn't too much better either, as it sits on a 47.44%, being panned by almost all critics. However, the GameCube version is slightly higher on 58%, but keep in mind this is only an average of 2 reviews. From what I can tell, it seems like the Powerpuff Girls are going to go out with a whimper instead of a bang. Relish Rampage is similar to Mojo Jojo A Go-Go and Him and Seek in that you control all 3 girls at the same time and can toggle through them. However, the difference here is that there's really no point to it. In those previous games, cycling through the girls meant you could use different powers and each girl had their own health bar. In Relish Rampage, all of their powers are basically shared and you only have one health bar, so it renders switching between the girls pointless. It's actually pretty much a 3D version of Him and Seek. You can fly all over Townsville and see all its different areas, just in 3D this time. I found that the graphics left a little to be desired though. I did like the look of the characters, but the city just feels so bland and it all kind of runs together. The cutscenes are also terrible. They're done more in the style of the in-game graphics than how the show looks, which I found strange. It makes everything look off and it's actually pretty distracting while you're watching them. If they had gone for 2D cutscenes and tried to be more like the actual show, I think it would have been a much better design choice. What the developers should be commended for is getting the entire voice cast for the game. Everybody from the girls to the professor to the mayor and Miss Ballum have their iconic voice and the performance is just superb.
Ballot boxes, but you'd better hurry, girls, or we'll miss the deadline for getting the votes to the counting office.
We won't let you down, Mayor!
It's nice to see that they went all out with the voices and included them for every part of the game, because it would have been incredibly easy to only voice the cutscenes or just rip soundbites from the show. The story of the game sees Mojo Jojo initially trying to run for mayor, which accidentally results in a race of alien pickles invading and trying to take over Earth. Each level of the game is presented like another episode of the show, which makes it feel like you're playing a multi-part episode. The humour the story brings is great, and it's actually one of the better aspects of Relish Rampage. So what's the actual gameplay like? Well, it's pretty standard fare for a Powerpuff Girls game at this point. You've got your basic kick and punch button, a button that lets you use your ranged eye lasers, and then you have special moves that can be performed when you collect vials of Chemical X. All of this should sound familiar because it's how every single one of the 9 games that have come before it played. If my description sounded familiar, then my complaints are definitely going to sound familiar too. The combat is just so basic and there's absolutely no depth to it. Here you have a lock-on mechanic to compensate for being in 3D, and each fight pretty much boils down to you locking on and then mashing the kick and punch button. Every now and then with different enemies you might want to throw in a ranged attack or 2, or maybe a special attack, but for the most part you're just mashing one button. The targeting system can also be a huge pain in the ass when you have more than one enemy in the vicinity. There are also only a few types of missions you're given in this game. You're either fighting against someone or something, racing against the clock to collect certain items, or doing an escort mission. This gets so repetitive, even just one level into the game. I must say though, I did get a strong The Simpsons hit and run vibe from this game. For starters, they're both animated series who received a game where they're in an open world version of the town in the show. Secondly, the types of missions used in Hit and Run are actually pretty similar to what's on offer in Relish Rampage. Heck, they even both feature an alien invasion as part of the story. You'd be excused for thinking these games share the same developer. As much as I have criticised the game so far, I think this is the game where you probably feel most like one of the Powerpuff Girls while playing. The speed at which you're able to zip around town, the size of Townsville, and the overall feeling sets it apart from the pile of other games based on the series. The combat isn't amazing here, but I guess when looking back on the show, I remember most of the girls' combat just being them smashing the hell out of whoever they were fighting. I don't remember it being something like Batman, where there was a lot of nuance to the combat, so maybe the shitty combat is an inherent pitfall of basing something on the Powerpuff Girls.
The Powerpuff Girls movie, now on DVD and video. These girls are super strong, super fast, and now the DVD extras are super too. The Powerpuff Girls movie. You can own the fun on DVD and video. Rated PG. Available in stores now and at CartoonNetwork.com.
Overall, I don't think the Powerpuff Girls Relish Rampage is exactly a good game. There are a bunch of problems with this game and things that seriously affect your enjoyment. The combat is so dull, the missions are ridiculously repetitive, and most of all, the game is only like 2 hours long. However, Viz have enough here to keep this from being a bad game. The voice acting and humour is great, the feeling of flying around town is awesome, and there's no ridiculous game-breaking bugs. It's kinda sad that I have to say that, but after playing a game like Disaster Strikes, it's a blessing to get something that actually works as intended. I actually think the reviews it received are a little harsh. Like the IGN review, for example. This game isn't a masterpiece, but there's no way you can tell me this is a 3.8. Hell, if this is a 3.8, I desperately want to know what they rate the rest of the garbage based on Cartoon Network franchises so far. In my opinion, this is by far the best Powerpuff Girls game, and quite frankly might be my favourite Cartoon Network game so far, potentially overtaking Dexter's Laboratory Robot Rampage.